And then what? Good morning. I guess it's afternoon now, November 1st. Heading into the holidays, right? And as anecdotal as most channels, most stations are, I guess you can't talk much more about hyperbole, the weather, and whether or not someone's fate will be in the consensus hands, right? All the way down to the name of this channel. It's a channel that knows liberation really isn't something that we can rely on. That is a capricious God, an ontological watchdog agent that looks out for the meek. And it makes me pissed off, gets my blood boiling just thinking about it, because I have firsthand experience that is not so. I mean, in fact, that's why the algorithms are so, disparately low in this category that I place myself in. And we do. We say, and then what? And most people can only see the victor's corner as fleeced with money, fleeced with man money, fleeced with money that's so dirty and tied to the dirtiest organizations, right? So did Charlie Kirk die? Was he assassinated? Some people on one camp say no, never happened. There's some Shambhala or some place where the elite go. Was he even an elite person? I mean, I don't think he was smarter than a thumbtack, and I think that they knew that, right? When I say they, you can look at Operation Gladio, you can look at the 1001 Club, or the Mossad. Is probably a more accurate place to look. But people have been fighting like this throughout history. I mean, antiquity is, again, I use the word because it's apropos of the time, stained with the blood of the past. And I realize that heroes don't exist, and that the frenzy that is required to build up the entropy, kick up the dust, that will invariably result in what people would deem a heroic deed, is in fact pulling energy from one area where there is a major amount of loss and sacrifice and placing it in another place. And it's like, that's not a game that I want to play. I realized that long ago, that you're just pulling that string, all right, that proverbial string, but it really isn't, that Mobius strip, right? So in direct reference to Kevin with Eek Acres, more so Bridget, and people make brilliant assertions, and I still think that those assertions are brilliant, but I think that people lack the cause and effect, in fact, the causal set of why they would speak out against something. Do you have evidence that this person murdered someone? Do you have evidence that this person is openly committing a crime? And, last night in the live that I don't even want to put up because somebody made one comment and got me thinking, but it wasn't even that I was thinking. It's that it just deflated any efforts. There's no way that I'm ever going to get involved with a frenzy of taking someone down for the sheer sake of just taking them down. I want to see, so it's not a silver lining argument. I want to see the release and the delivery of somebody who doesn't necessarily just say openly, oh, I'm wrong, but just sees the light of reason and is instantly transformed. And unfortunately, the only thing that seems to do this, focusing on light, transformation, right, are these occulted groups that we look at with fascination, these programmed killers, these like Operation GCD likes to talk about, Colby's queers, right? where he's not using the term queer in any sense, but is he? Because the truth is that this is a very dark production factory where people's minds, their beings are being altered on such a mass scale that I know that the end all cause is something much grander and greater than focusing on one man and his ethical dilemma that happens to match yours and yours and yours and yours and yours, and you are offended by that, right? Because you say there's no way, you stand back aghast and say there's no way, but yet there you lie to get into the apartment or to get your child into an apartment. There you lie on the you know, if you're filling out a state sponsored resource requirement, if you're filling out a bank loan, if you're asked by the teacher of your child in a classroom, those little white lies stack up to big mistruths. And so you would say, you know, that's all the more reason to like take somebody like Kevin down. And you have to ask yourself if you are not jealous, and then when you go to that jealousy, you instantly see this guy as a liar in every single video. And so what I'm saying, bottom line, is the thing that I want to see is I want to see humanity stop promoting these people. That is where the power lies. It doesn't lie in taking someone down, boosting up their ratings, destroying their health. Like I instantly think about Liver King, you know, and I think about the fact that he lived a lie. And I see the same type of lie with Kevin, but he's just a small little man. He's a small little man with still very meager means. Like, do you understand that he's blown up, right? He's blown up his income from YouTube, right? He's expounded on it quite a bit, right? If anything. But he did. That's the only thing I've ever seen Kevin show, and I may be wrong on this, but it's the only thing I've ever seen Kevin show any proof of. Like days ago, he should have given proof to a PET scan. Still has, what is it? I looked at it, 81,000.4 followers. Do I care? So I go back like you do. I judgment in this sort of referential treatment. I look at this and I go, okay, he lied here. He lied here, he lied here, hyperbole. But then I go on to every other YouTube channel and that's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like, here they are expounding on certain truths that are, not, so what I like to see, obviously the things that I find more important, right, is taking down this frenzy of consensus. And the only way to do that is to get people to go through this revolutionary moment where they go, wow, we're not getting anywhere with this, and divine justice is never going to come, right? There is no capricious God there. So in that, our collective minds should be focused on taking down the big problem, right? Unearthing, unveiling the big problem instead of these little pocketed, what would I assume it as, like how I see Kevin, is I see him as both a contemporary to you and I. Like I want you to admit that he is more like you than you think. And I'm not saying that to offend anybody, and please hear me out here, but I'm also saying that he pushed it a little further than you perhaps, or anybody that you know. And what really gets to you is those people that you know that got away with utter lies and the most heinous bullshit you can imagine, and it was just twisting the wrench a little bit, taking a little more out, right? Rigging the bingo system, right? So long story short is that if we're not taking down the cause, right, if we're not focusing on the cause, we're not going to see much movement with these pocketed demons, because ultimately I see Kevin as a demon who refuses to look at himself, refuses to acknowledge the issues that his actions, you know, inspire, which is his rapid aging. I believe, yeah, quite possibly Bridget's rapid aging, a stress of living with so many white lies that pretty soon you don't know what the truth is, and that the only reason you could ever live in that type of toxic, turbulent household is if you were raised in something like that, if you never knew any better. So ultimately, you know, and then you're not a messiah. You can't transpose yourself to another universe and sit on some high cloud, right? It would be nice to say, look, all we want is release. All we want is evolution. All we want is for people to see the folly of their ways and have this come to Jesus moment. But that doesn't exist here on this planet. It never has. What we're left with is the strangeness of, I post up Isaac Asimov, a lot of great thinkers, and I'm not saying that they have all the answers, but they're looking at this process of solution in a very complex sort of way, right? They're looking at things, and again, I use the term doxastic way, where you have to involve not only just the maths and the philosophy and the sciences when you're looking at a problem and you're trying to figure something out, but symbolism, right? And you could say, divine justice comes around, he'll get his, and it's kind of like, then you see someone like this pass away that might have children. I don't know. Somebody was alluding to the fact that maybe Kevin has a totally different persona, has had a wife and kids. I don't see that. When you go back and you look at Kevin's earlier videos, he really is just a very gruff person that wanted to become a YouTube star, right? And at times he would say certain things that contradicted that. Like, I would just like to be comfortable. And he reached it. And I think that's what really gets people's blood boiling, is that through all the wrong ways, right? Like, he literally may have used cancer improper, like lied about it point blank, which is what he has done is a criminal offense. If people think that that's embellishing, you need to go look at the legal patterns. Now, when I started, what threw me off is when somebody was like, you might be saying things that are defaming him. Well, guess what? I don't have any assets, so I'm not worried about it. I don't really give a shit, to be quite honest with you. I'm putting information out there that's readily available for everyone. Most of anything that I've said is reiterating the things that are going around through the consensus, and I'm putting up statements, comments about other people. What's going to happen? They're going to take off a video off of my channel, and it's like, that's what gets it thinking. It's like, yeah, of course, people want to protect their little white lies. They want to protect their lies. They want to protect, and in doing so, they protect Kevin's lies, right? So I put up enough content, enough videos, is what I realized. And I don't need to try and champion things from a level where I'm holding, their vigils. Like, to have a live stream and to, like, if you don't defame someone, it's not entertaining. And that's not what this channel is about. That's not what any of my channels about. You'll see that that's not what I am about. And these moments are what define us. So I don't really care. Like, I had like 50 subscribers, I think, like last year on this channel, and I would lose subscribers because I would just pull content off, because I would also go through, just like a store, you go through the wheelhouse in your head, you go through the itemization of the things you said, the things you did, and you go, I don't feel good about this. And this is crossing the personal line with myself, where I don't really give a flying shit about Kevin, okay? And I don't know the people in his life. Not that I don't have sympathies or care about the many deaths that his family has experienced, and the fact that maybe he's somewhat at fault with that, right? Maybe nobody in his family really reached the important task of self-development. And like I like to say, I like to believe that you can develop a soul. and that what I'm talking about is the fact that there are greater truths than focusing on some little demon that's so insignificant and so small compared to the ocean of injustice that's going on, right? And yes, you could also say, well, so this is not a video where I'm taking anything down. This isn't even a video that I won't bring the subject up again. This video is about I'm going to need the further burden of proof. Like, it's been pretty insane, the videos that I've seen in the past few days. I must admit that. Looking at videos that go back 7 years that I had no idea even existed. Then he's uneducated, gruff, even violent, showing violent tendencies. Accusations that he may or may not have even stabbed Sandy, and then they break up not too far after that. The type of hell that people must live in, being with such a short-sighted, ambitious. He's ambitious, and that's Kevin's problem. But when you look at this and you go, well, he's ambitious because the world, as it's presented to us, people like Trump becoming president, and the people who are still in Congress and the Senate, and the shit show just keeps going on, and nothing ever seems, the system's broken. And I look at the entirety of the system and I think, at times I feel like I know how to fix this. And the problem is that Kevin becomes so insignificant because Kevin is wiped away and washed away. From what I can see, he doesn't have any lineage. My kids love me. I fucked up a lot, but my kids love me, and that's a huge statement about, and that's what Kevin doesn't have. He's a 54-year-old that is so immature that he doesn't realize what he's passed up on. And if he does have kids and he's not present in their lives, wow, that says even more about him. But will any of that information come to light? I mean, you're really looking at a child when you look at Kevin. You're looking at a damaged little child that's unfortunately expired. I was watching Welcome to Derry last night on, Sam Hain, the Sabbat, the witch's high holiday, right? And I'm watching episode 2 of the first season here, and how dark and strange and gloomy it is. And then I think about how, in some way, as minor as it may seem to most people, I might have put this message out there, right? That you're looking at this defamation of specific peoples, and that's not my karmic responsibility to take that any further. Like, I've made so many statements in such a myriad of ways, sometimes in the most complex thought processes, that it wasn't something that I could continue on day to day and still care about doing the most minor things in my life. And that's what I get down to, is the fact that here we are in this physical world, having to go through all these ridiculous physical gestures and movements, right, that take away, literally, the energy and the focus of tackling those greater truths. And in reference to Welcome to Derry, some of the darkest themes are present in the simplest of, you could say, oh, it's a dark theme, of course. And it's like, no, the dark gets darker, and it even proposes itself to have a form, a symbol, a solution that is being promoted through, like, Hollywood hasn't gotten any better. The fact that we all have sunk into this singular sort of mind. Kevin is just an artifact of what everyone's doing every single day. Kevin's such a simple person that the way I see it is all Kevin's doing is mimicking all of us. And he's the seventh kid, maybe the eighth. Who knows the truth? It doesn't seem like a number 7 to me. You could say the runt, the lucky one. Maybe he is the lucky one because it sounds like a lot of his family members passed away early. I think we should be looking at the water systems. Um, I think we should be taking very seriously what is being proposed with Kevin. I think we need to look at the fact that if Kevin's just a hypochondriac and he really didn't have any of these illnesses, I mean, you can go back. I think I'm counting way more than 5 times where he's shifted over in this way from having an illness or a disease, at least like six or 7 times. It's insane. I had no idea that, from scleroderma to um, hand issues, appendix. It's like, okay, so here we are divided. I'm looking at this going, this guy is sick. Okay, what if it's true? That's exactly what a tainted water system would do. And when you have a bolsterous immune system and you are a little, a little fighter, at least inside. Now, Kevin tries to posture himself as, he even in his earlier days, he was like, I'll go kick this guy's ass. And he's sort of like making up a friend in his mind and making up a scenario where he's the hero. I see that he hasn't overcome anything, that he's a fragile little man. I've been in that situation myself. I've been the big guy who everybody's afraid of. I've been the skinny little guy that, and I'm not talking about in a chronological sequence of order. I'm talking about going up and going down. Like I just gained 65 pounds, and a large portion of that was muscle just recently, and I couldn't believe how I would get treated, even in as old as I am, where there is zero respect when you weigh 155 pounds these days, even if you're solid muscle, right? Even if you're fit, right? So what's good for you and your longevity, the rest of the world doesn't give a flying fuck about. You could reverse something that most scientists would want to study you for it, right? Some sort of ailment like, say, diabetes, right? High blood pressure, where you see something reverse overnight and your life, and it's not taking any more stress. It's not putting any more stress on you. It's not taking away from you in any other way. In fact, it's giving to you. And some people thought this was happening with orthomolecular nutrition. I certainly did at one time. Some people thought that just supplementing with something like diatomaceous earth would help them, right? And then you realize that the banal mediocrity is what we're always shooting for. We can't be happy at the fact that we don't have any illnesses present. Everything's boring, but the clock is still ticking. The gray hairs still pop out from places that you thought they could never pop out, and time goes on in procession, right? And then you see these weird religions that are focusing on the only thing you can see is the procession of the stars, looking at the equinox and focusing in on all these age-old traditions that harken back to the things that the Freemasons are looking at, that are very paganistic in their rituals and the rites. And so there's a bigger, broader picture to look at. And so the most perplexing thing, where I haven't seen the evidence come forth that puts my mind at ease at all, and I've had some of the weirdest experiences you can ever imagine in your entire life, okay? And they're things that I've talked about, and when I do begin to talk about it, I'm instantly overcome with the realization that the reason you can't talk about this is that you're not supposed to talk about this. This is a personal experience. Even if it was happening existentially out in the open, there's no way that this can be quantified into a product on display that's just merely meeting people's entertainment purposes, right? So I'm not going to entertain people by taking somebody down that's already had hard knocks, and the reason they lie is because they absolutely don't know themselves, and they're basically walking around in this state where they finally have a forum, people are listening to them. The truth should be evident. The consensus, you, the people, should hash this all out. The people out there watching Kevin should know better. It shouldn't be a huge margin of 95%. I'm not going to use the term and put people down like Kevin likes to do, idiots, right? No, they are people who are comfortable at observing only a fraction of that iceberg. They're comfortable seeing the little Starbucks on top of that iceberg that could plop and flip down any moment, right? But that secret society knows something that none of us want to believe in and want to know, and that is the sway of the people. Why it was so important to put the people as the representatives in Congress, but as the primary fuel behind not only this country, the very fuel behind the Constitution as it sits today, originally written as a temporary measure until we could come up with something better. And I believe that we have, but we haven't come to that standstill. We haven't come to the stand like Stephen King. We haven't come to that moment, that grand unified moment where it becomes irrefutable. And perhaps small miracles will happen, but I don't believe in those capricious qualities, you know. But what I will say in summary is that Kevin isn't a dragon to take down. He is one small facet of the reflection in society of humanity as a whole. He's the kid who wanted to put on a performance for his parents, and his parents were sick of seeing him because he was so far down the line that all he represented was just further stress, further poverty. And to get back to the rational thinking is the fact that his mother, being, as he purports it and says it, being an alcoholic, right? That the father was making some pretty poor choices, right? And then when I look at the evidence, like what trips me out is how I could make a mistake with somebody I knowingly should not have been sleeping with. I knowingly shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. And you can blame everything. You can blame society, and it probably is their fault. You can blame some unseen force that's playing with your body, playing with your mind, putting you in situations. But ultimately, what do you come out with? You come out with a child who has to decide between good and evil every single time. And you could say it's beyond good and evil, which we talk about on this channel to length, right? When we look at Nietzsche and we look at other highly ontological thinkers, right? Bringing up Fromm the other day, I appreciated that. That's where I want to keep the dialectic, right? But as long as I'm putting someone down that is a mere byproduct, a reflection of that. So it really comes down to the disheartening choice of looking at Kevin. Is Kevin, the real question that we're looking at is Kevin an NPC player? Is Kevin incapable ever, no matter how you alter or change the environmental field of reality or offshoots of dimensions, is Kevin a byproduct of disharmony, disorder, right? And this is the fascination. This is why people watch him. But you have to break this down, and I've already broken this down in EPL, Esoteric Principles of Light. And it's why I'm on a campaign, right? That's if it said anything to see the folly of my ways, that this is a lesson in futility, right? So this is a lesson to us to decide whether or not we firmly back and believe in purity as the central theme to principles, right? And then understanding that now that we realize and acknowledge we are still here, we're not transposed into a heavenly or a Valhalla or a Shambhala. We're not suddenly transposed into another universe or another world yet. All these evil people seem to be scrambling somewhere, right? It's becoming very clear that JFK was taken out because he was a philanderer, and he probably ran off at the mouth to the wrong people. He was taking down their cabal. He was trying to do things that were far more grandiose than what he um, that didn't reflect on the folly of his ways. Like there's a lot of conjecture, just like with Lincoln, that he was gay, right? And then you get into, like, I'm looking at these operations, going, wow, Alan Turing was gay, and um, Charles Darwin Galton, right? His 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 nephew, I believe. I've read the book. I even read that book on Darwin and stuff, and I just tend to forget because I scrap away the eugenics thing, right? The Margaret Sanger thing, all that, because it's not that these things aren't true or why the IQ test was developed, and it's just this military. It literally is just a psyop. Like, how long has this psyop been going on? And what they realize is, as a collective, as long as we choose sort of this, I'd say, I would go more towards Spartans, but I'd say it's more like the fascination of watching people like Gladiator duke it out and kill one another. Like, this easily turns into, oh, let's kill Kevin. Like, and then you see what happened with Kevin when he put this out there, right? It's like, I was talking about stabbing ontology, and it's like, what? Or stabbing Mother Nature, right? And people think that means that and it's like, I'm not out to campaign to kill anybody. I'm looking for signs of life everywhere, all the time. I'm not out to run someone over and take away their lives. I want to see evidence that people can be, um, I'm not going to say saved, right? Because that's a very dogmatic, heretical statement. But it really is, in the end, that's exactly what it is. Because you do have this come to Jesus moment within yourself, where you come to this place where you can't take another step forward, just like I can't. You can't speak another ill word about another person who's going through this process. And the patience of that process is impossible for us. That's why this world is significant. That's why this massive game, right, is afoot here on this planet. Um, you could say a prison planet, right? But it's more than that, because it's like there's one specific outcome, and that is whether or not you are going to garner and gain a principle focus and understand those principles like I do. And so I'm actually turning my back on the most important thing if I go on this fox hunt, this witch hunt. Now, I don't want to see, like, people don't understand the long, arduous process and the years that I've gone through at just battling with myself, right? Where, wow, the only thing that you can really afford is stacks of meat to go on carnivore, and you'll lose weight instantly. Like, if you want to know how to drop body fat, I showed people. I showed them. I got down to 150 pounds, like Kevin's weight, but I was muscular and shredded at that weight, and I wasn't even having to work out that much. But I understood what it's like to be this little. We're about the same height. This little 6 foot tall guy, this gangly guy who doesn't really have any power to. I remember this one time, the first time that I really got shredded and started to understand this, when I was observing gluconeogenesis and just doing protein, and suddenly my waist was like ultra tiny, and I still had muscle, and I was trying to work out my diet, and I went to this. It's like in my 30s. Okay, I went to this bar or this nightclub or something for some reason, and I'm standing there, and I'm wearing. I think I was meeting somebody. I'm wearing my or maybe I wasn't, but I was wearing. A friend of mine gave me these shoes, and I'm standing there, and they have this very slippery bottom, right? And I looked like Bruce Lee or something, right? I have just shredded, but it's like a look, right? It's a look. And so I remember this guy this young guy who had been slamming all these beers. He was like this bulky young guy who didn't give a shit about that, right? And of course, I've gone on and off with that type of thing. And the guy's like, "What are you, some kind of kung fu Shaolin like martial artist?" And he wasn't like arguing with me that I didn't have the speed or the ability when he was challenging me and saying something really rude to me. I don't even remember what it was, but I was like ready to do some shit with the guy, right? And he literally just pushed me back. Like my body didn't move. I was so solid, and he pushed me back. It was he didn't do it violent or hard. He just went boom. He was standing there with his freaking boots on, chilled out, drinking his big, stein of ale, drunk off his ass, watching the world go around. Probably just got off a job, working 10 hours as a mechanic or something like that. Still had the grit and the grime on him. Probably walked around the corner to polish off a couple beers. But there he is, probably 220 pounds of bulky muscle. But it's the type of bulky muscle where he was authentic in being himself, right? He probably didn't do much dieting, much worrying about anything. And that cleared it out, his wheelhouse, to just keep going as the person he was. Whereas I had just dropped all this weight, was trying to go for this aesthetic idea of perfection. And you see, as evident on my channel, I'm still stuck in that, even as high an IQ as I might claim to have, because who knows what we have left from the remnants of our past glory, right? And who knows how smart or asymmetrical my intelligence was all along. But when you get down to the artifact of what you produce at the end of your life, what the entirety of your life represents, it has to be something that comes to some sort of treaties with itself, where you no longer compromise. You're willing to stand there. You're willing to be yourself, but then there's no nervousness. So in a sense, that guy passed a huge test, right? Is that all this study, all this complexity, all this self-proposed understanding. And this is what happens when we're listening to people like Mike Israelty. I've always known, and I've always said, this guy is full of shit. He says everything contrary, backwards, right? But then what people have brought up is that it seems to be a grand psyop going on out in the open, because he knows how to do all the right things for himself, even though he has, right? Like what he's under fire for and what is bringing him down is one person. And that's probably what it would take with Kevin, is that somebody would have to catch on to this who knows a thing or two, knows more, and they're staying silent, right? About Kevin and a true history, a true past. Now, according to Ryan Costa, that's already happened. Like Ryan Costa is showing signs of that guy, that bulky guy in that bar, just standing in his way, standing in his presence and going, all you have to do is look at the details that need to be looked at. So he's gone and he's interviewed Kevin's, he's looked at Kevin's brother, Todd. He's looked at his coworkers. He's looking at Bridget's family. And he's not assaultively going at these people. He's actually just gaining information, talking to people. And so something that where I could help, quite possibly, is formulating something and putting it together where I would be happy to interview somebody. I'd be happy to get the consensus of the thinkers, like Orange Spice Drops, right? Who's really putting some great effort into thinking about this, but isn't isn't necessarily succumbing to the frenzy, right, of this thing. Like, she really wants to step up and report this guy, right? And I think that there's enough cause, there's enough reason. But I'm deliberating on bigger issues where I'm going, well, this guy's soul is on the line, right? If he even has a soul, or if a soul even exists, right? He already hasn't had any offspring, so he's not spreading that down from what I can see, what I see and tend to believe for the most part. And he's doesn't really have any family. And we're supposed to be at ease with that, right? That's what Kevin kind of shows you, that I am unstable. He's basically, stating, and then he rants and has so much anger in all of his videos that, honestly, if you're still watching him at this point, and that's the basic premise, again, to this video, is like, I don't want to watch Kevin anymore. I don't want to talk about Kevin anymore. I don't want to look at Kevin anymore. I don't think that he's a complex issue that we need to be focusing on. I think there's much bigger, broader issues that we should be looking at. And I think the reason we're speculatively looking at Kevin is because we're trying to take leave from the fact that we can't get the grander, bigger answers for things that are happening out in the open, like Charlie Kirk, like all these weird, and I'm sick of watching these programs, feeding into it, where speculation just swirls around and there are no outcomes and answers. So I turn to you, the viewer, and I say, look, if we're ever going to get anywhere with this, you're going to have to look at people like Ryan Costa and Orange Spice Drops and start stepping up to where you're not hiding behind the moniker of this thing. You are really trying to get something done. So, collectively, I think that if people, this is just one man's vote. This is just one man's, I would like to see this brought to fruition. I do believe, when I say fruition, I do believe that there's a teleological aspect to this where Kevin is supposed to be revealed and brought down. Now, if you think that he should go off and self-delete, or that something really violent and terrible should happen to him, no. What we hope for with Trump and all these other people is that they'd be stripped of their little medals, or the medals in their mind, right? And they'd come to a place where they saw the practicality of coming back and bolstering who they really are, instead of trying to starve yourself and suck in your cheeks and look ripped on camera, like all the people on YouTube. Instead of trying to go off after these grandiose, ridiculous things like parkouring and jumping off buildings, or, I think that stuff's fascinating and cool. But there's certain people, you'll admit, that just shouldn't even be in that arena and trying to attempt those things in the first place. You have to be very well trained. You have to feel comfortable doing this. And you really have to have funds and means for the proper equipment. You can't just go buy some off-brand, off-store wingsuit and jump off a cliff and think it's that easy. It takes arduous study and research and a collectivism of learning from other people to get anywhere in this society, in this world, dealing with the physics that we're dealing with every single day. And that's what it's going to take, folks. It's the same answer every single time. It's going to take a collective of like-minded people who aren't out to grab the easy peasy solution, but are looking at the practicality of real facts, which, again, I mentioned those two people. Other people have come forward with that. If you're going to do anything, it's about you stepping up and looking at the 100% the factual nature of certain without making certain claims, walking away and being appeased, and then just being fueled by anger at the end of the day that you're going to take somebody down, right? Looking at the fact that the injustices never should have happened. In other words, Kevin was talking about this many years ago. In other words, you're not going to garner or gain pleasure from the fact that, oh, Kevin's starving now because he was screwing over disability all those years. He's already provisionally, he'll be fine without the $700 or $800 of the, what I think is just the most minor disability, because he didn't pay back into the system, right? As he likes to espouse and report himself to be. Okay, that for almost 20 years he's gotten away with staying on disability, and that is just one little kink, right? The real problem here, the real issue is him suckering people on YouTube, and the real issue is YouTube itself and how it formats its players, how it's drawing on the sensationalism of some really terrible people, and how many deaths, how many crimes, how many, like, this YouTube is really fueled, has been the fuel, the incendiary fuel behind the fires that never should have happened if there wasn't this need to see people killing each other out in the open. That's really what's happening. Or seeing the desperation that acts and deeds that never should have been committed are happening in under the name of this cult of celebrity, right? So in short, again, in summary, it's about you. It's about you, the people, making the necessary choices. But we're going to have to see people boycotting channels like Liver King, who is just a liar. And you would say, oh, he's taken so much growth hormone, he's got enlarged organs and heart, and you can't ever turn that around. Once you've done that, he took the easy road, and many people would claim that on a much smaller scale with Kevin. But what we all see, what we all anticipate, is channels like this that have already gotten 81,000 up to 81,000 subscribers. The next thing, all he has to do is start putting documentaries forward, and suddenly the law of exponentials will take his channel up to 300,000, and then suddenly he'll have 1.5 million subscribers, and you'll see somebody, this little demon, become just like the rest of these people who are taking in $15,000-$20,000 a month. And I think that's what pisses people off. But you have to do your research. You have to look into this with due diligence and gratify those questions in yourself. Is, are you doing this because you're jealous? Are you doing this because you don't want to see someone else prosper? Are you doing this because you're short-sighted and you just simply don't like the fact that you don't have 80,000 subscribers and they do? You have to be really honest with yourself about that. And then you have to come to terms with, well, justice that should have been served long ago wasn't. And then you need to, on a broader scale, look all around you in your own life, in your own family, and come to that realization, right? Because this isn't about some minor, that's why the world seems so unjust to people, because we're living in the solution, in the matrix of disillusionment. We're living in this state where we have chosen to see this gladiator-esque conquesting moment, this Mad Max in the Thunderdome, where all the wrong moves resulted in the wrong outcome, the wrong reality, the wrong behavior. And now all we see is this promotion toward violence. And that's how Trump got reinstated where he is, because he represents this brand of violence in the way that he talks, the assaultive way that he goes about doing everything. That's how most of these sports franchises move every single day that are sucking up billions of dollars. That's how YouTube contends to keep going, and TikTok fueling this cult of personality, fueling this fascination with seeing people on live stream being taken down, right? And it should be under the moniker of justice. It should be that principles need to be placed at the highest esteemable measure. It should be that you are protecting the purity, the fidelity of purity for your niece, your grandson, your grandchild. And if you believe in something like reincarnation, re-embodiment, these red rite rituals, that even a divine justice, these demonic agents wouldn't want to set root here ever again. That purity would reign forevermore. That's the thing that should be the primarily focus with all of us.